Hello, everybody, and welcome back. It is me, Cyber Warrior. You're on CyberWarriorStudios, and this is Security Happy Hour. And today, I have two amazing guests. I've got John Breth, who goes by Jay Bizzle and some numbers. It's in the description on Twitter. Who's been doing amazing things. I see him all over the place on Twitter, talking to DJax, and Tyrone, and just all the things he's been doing throughout the community. So I had to get him on. Thankfully, he filled out the form, and he's here. And then I've got Chris Lopez, Lopsec on Twitter. And he is someone that I've been following for a little while. I don't see him show up too much on my feed, unfortunately. But he's here, wanted to get on. And I wanted to get a little bit more background about him and see how things are going and what he's up to. Because I did a little bit of research. And I know he's got a lot of big things going on too. So I'm hoping it's a great episode. I mean, as always, I always try to put on a great episode for everybody. But be sure to ask your questions. We'll try to get them answered. In the meantime, let's kick this off. And John, why don't you get us started? Let us know kind of where you're coming from, what you got going on, and where you're trying to get to and things like that.
So you mean just like career-wise, or
In general, so generally I start off with how you got into the field, what was your journey? Because
yeah,
everybody's journey is different, right? And so I want people to know that you don't have to be like me, who started working in IT at 7 years old, breaking his computer and fixing it. Well, breaking
yeah,
my dad's computer and fixing it, and then coming up into it. But, others get in when they're in their 20s or 30s. Hell, my dad didn't start doing it till he was in his 50s.
yep.
So, what was your journey like, and, what are you doing now? And if you have any plans for the future as to, career-wise or anything like that, what you want to do?
Sure. So yeah, my path was definitely a little bit different than yours. I never really was into tech or computers or anything like that, and grew up in Southern Maine and graduated high school and didn't really have all that many opportunities as far as college or careers or things like that. And so I joined the Air Force and just happened to be lucky to score enough on the ASVAB test to be able to pretty much pick whatever job they offered. And so they had a whole bunch of different technical jobs, and I'm like, oh, that one sounds kind of cool. I don't know anything about it. And it ended up being a job in long haul telecommunications. So got trained up on that. Part of that was kind of like some network training and stuff like that. Uh, did tech control, long haul telecom for about 3 years, and then got handpicked to go work on a network supporting Air Force One. So it's kind of like a special duty assignment that was kind of an unofficial special duty assignment. And that was much more networking based type of stuff. And during that time in that year working in that shop, I, went after a whole certs, did a Sec Plus, Network Plus, CCNA, started a CCNP, and it also coincided with my end of my enlistment. And so I got out of the Air Force and kind of decided to stay in the area because I was stationed outside of Washington, D.C. And there's just so many tech jobs in this area. I mean, this was back in 2003 through 2007. Just decided to, hang out around here, got a job doing some government contracting consulting work, continued that path doing networking stuff. So finished up the Network Plus, I mean, not the Network Plus, the CCMP, went to grad school, worked kind of in that type of environment for about 6 years, then started to get a little bit more into the cyber side of things when I went and started working for a tier one ISP and worked for them, became their lead architect on a cybersecurity program. Was with them for about another 6 years or so, at which point I started my own company doing IT and cybersecurity consulting. And that's what I do now and have been doing for about the past 3 years. So from a work perspective, that's kind of, where I've aligned. As far as other things that I have going on kind of in the past year and a half, I've really, found this community on Twitter, which I didn't even realize existed. So previous to that, everything I did was, related to people that I actually knew in the work environments I was in. I didn't realize that there was, this whole large community of folks out there sharing information with each other. And once I kind of tapped into that, I was like, hey, I think this is a good opportunity to kind of try to give back as much as I can. I mean, I had a lot of folks along my path that helped me out and, tried to guide me in the right direction, give me some good insight. And so, yeah, that's pretty much what I try to do now, is just create content for new folks getting into IT and cyber, and, try to share a little bit of wisdom and point them in the right direction. Because, I love the work I do. I'm passionate about it. And yeah, I just like sharing all that with other people who, are interested in getting in to, either lift their lives up, because tech is amazing. I mean, it's a great equalizer for folks who come from backgrounds that maybe they don't have as much privilege or don't have as much money, and maybe don't come from a great education background. Um, the amount of opportunities that are out there are amazing, and so just try to help people out as much as I can in regards to
Yeah,
that.
yeah, definitely. And that's that's a path that a lot of people I have seen have traveled, is the military route. And as a veteran myself, I know how valuable it can be. Now, you did, I would say, one of the smarter things and went through the Air Force. I started in the Air Force and then went active duty Army. So
Okay.
I was in the Air National Guard originally before I crossed over. And
Yep.
but I still always found my way into IT. Like you, I took the ASVAB, and they're like, you can have any job you want. I said, I want to work on computers. And so I was basically help desk, server support, routing and switching. Like in the schoolhouse, they taught me everything. It was a 3CO.
Was that 3CO or 3C2?
I was a 3CO. And
Okay,
then whenever the conversion came about right before I left the Guard, it was a 3DO, I believe, was the one. So it was cybersecurity. And then I went to the Army. I was supposed to go work and do fun offensive security things. And of course, the Army did what the Army does and said no. And I ended up being in broadcast engineering, but doing all IT stuff while in broadcast engineering, until eventually I went into their cybersecurity field. So I got a lot of training, and I did a lot of things. Like, no matter what branch you go into, if you don't have a path, especially if financially you're struggling and can't find a way into the field, a 4-year career, like a 4-year, enlistment, isn't out of the realm of a quick way to, keep your head down, do what you need to do, and get the education and the knowledge to carry you forward. I'm not going to say it should be everybody's path. I'm not going to say everybody belongs there. But if you have no way to do what you want to do, it's a start. But again, everybody has a different journey. So that is how I got my feet in the door. I was already doing IT before I went active duty and everything else like that. But I got my foot in the door by being in the Army, getting certifications, getting the knowledge, and doing a lot of research on my own. And that's something I always impress upon people. So, John, like, you like to give back to the community, which is why I started this show and Tech Tuesdays and my channel in general, which, thank you, everybody, for helping me hit 1,000 subscribers this week. It's been a long road, and I hope to keep growing. Cheers. But definitely, thank you. Cheers. I do this because on Twitter, I didn't really start getting into the cyber Twitter until, I don't know, probably the past 2 years or so. If that, maybe the past year or two. And even then, I would follow people, but no one saw me because I didn't put out a lot of information. I was always just either retweeting something or liking or whatever somebody else posts, if I was even on. And so in the past years, when I learned, hey, there's algorithms that you actually have to be active for people to see anything you put out there. So I started doing that. And I do have to say, the people that I've met on Twitter are by far some of the most supportive and helpful people for breaking into this career field. Yep. No matter what it is. We've all seen the struggles. We've all seen the, I can't get a job, I don't have experience, but I have a security plus. I can't get a job, I have all these certifications, but everybody wants 5 years experience for, a junior analyst job. Networking is key. So giving back is what I do and what I get a lot of joy from. And so getting people on the show that maybe don't have a job or working help desk or whatever the case may be, it gets them out there, gets them a little bit of exposure, and allows other people to see them. So if they apply for a job, they can say, oh yeah, I was on this show. Right. Go look up this video. I mean, honestly, if you're not going to do your own blog, your own YouTube channel, being on something at least gets you a little bit out there so that you can show your knowledge.
Yep.
So I find that useful. But yeah, so I love your journey because as a veteran myself, I don't know how I keep finding more vets that I'm just like, yeah, come on the show. I like talking to vets. But it's that brotherhood and sisterhood, you know, just that family dynamic and you know, something that is hard to get rid of. And I would never want to get rid of it. I love the atmosphere of, you know, unity with and cohesion within the military. So before we get any further, Chris, let us know, man. Same questions, you know, what was your journey like, and you know, kind of what are you doing now?
Yeah, so yeah, I don't really speak about my journey often, so I'll get into it. I think it's interesting, at least to me. So we'll see how that goes. So similar to what John said, I mean, I did not really care for technology at all when I was younger. The most that I cared about it was how much time can I play video games, right? Like that was it for me. Um, and I got out of high school and I had no direction. I moved out of my parents' house at 18 because I thought that was a genius idea. And nothing. I went to work, you know, at UPS at this time, the night shift, you know, lifting packages. I was 18 at that time, right? 2 years later, I had a child, my son. That was the drive that I needed to do something. I'll never forget, like, you know, coming home and they're, you know, just living in poverty because me and his mother, you know, we made like collectively like $30,000 a year, you know, and we had a child that very young. Things were not looking very good. So, you know, I was working in, you know, the building in a warehouse, and I remember seeing there were some people that were dressed a little bit nicer than I was, and they were just hauling around computers, and I'm like, that looks a lot better than picking up packages that are heavy. So let me find out what that is. So I started talking to their manager, and this is something I try to emphasize whenever I speak to anyone about this field or getting into IT. Really like try to break down doors if you can in the nicest way possible. So I just walked into this guy's office. His name is Mark. One of the first people to hold their hand out, and there's a lot of people like that in my journey that gave me an opportunity. And he was like, "Hey, you need to get your A plus and your Network Plus before you even get into the door of IT." I didn't even know what the A plus was or the Network Plus was. I was not on any social media or anything at this time. I didn't know anything about that. So I went on Amazon and I bought the books, and I finished both of them in 2 months. And then I went back and I'm like, all right, so now what? What do I do to get in here? And I had to wait 6 months, but at least that was the first time, right? So, you know, I got into IT after 6 months, and it was very fixed, you know, just printers, which, you know, I are everyone's enemy. Like that was what I did, was fix printers for a while and like help, you know, UPS customers and things like that with computer problems and whatever. It was really good to introduce me to Windows and like things like that. Like I was not very high level at all with the things that I did, but it was a really good introduction to IT. And from there, I started realizing that I wanted more. I wanted more out of the career. I wanted to do something else. So I remember I was speaking to like one of the managers, and I'm like, I want to get into security. And there was basically, I was told there's no real like step up into security because it's in this like other location in Kentucky or something like that at that time, right? And in New Jersey. So I was like, okay, well, I took some time off of, you know, my personal time from IT, and I paid for a plane ticket to go meet the manager of the SOC personally, and just talk to him. I sat in his office, and I'm like, the same thing I did with, you know, to get into IT. I was like, okay, I want this. What do I do? What do I need to do to get here? And one of the things that they told me was, you know, at that time I already had my Security Plus because it just made sense to get the third one. And then basically one of the requirements, which a lot of people would probably not like to hear this one, was like get a bachelor's degree, because that was like really important, you know, within this thing. So, you know, I made sure to keep that contact going, and I spoke to this person all the time. Every time I saw a job opening internal, UPS, I would reach out. And then I started talking to all the different managers through LinkedIn and through the internal email to start injecting myself into their conversations. Like, hey, I'm here. What do I need to do? I had no experience. So it was like I had to somehow get in there. So I don't know what it was, maybe me just bothering enough or showing some kind of initiative. Maybe it worked out. I got that call, like, hey, put in your resume, put in something. By that time, I was about to finish my bachelor's, which was tough because I think I slept probably 3-4 hours a day for like 3 years because, I worked at night and I took care of my son during the day. It was tough, but, it was part of what you need to do. And I got the opportunity and I joined the SOC. And now that blew my mind because I walk in there and I'm like very much super entry level IT even. Walked into a SOC and I'm talking to people that are investigating like the registry and explaining how things actually work in memory. And I'm just like, what does that mean? I don't even understand any of that stuff. So I did what I tell other people to do. I sat there. I asked a million questions about everything. I took notes, I reviewed my notes, and I spent a significant amount of my free time catching up. Built a lab, started learning about attacker techniques, started learning how to do things on my own. And then a lot of the SOC, that at least where I've worked, is investigating log events, so learning how to use log events and how to correlate between different things. And then somehow it ended up working out. I don't know. So one day it started clicking and I started being able to investigate things, and that was awesome. And it's something I love. I love talking about how an analyst thinks and like how to go through an investigation. That's like what piques my interest. And then after UPS, I ended up changing companies to a company named Tanium, which I'm at now. And I'm also in the SOC there. And yeah, I spend my time trying to research how things work and working on now. I moved over to more of like a Mac OS and Linux, based understanding of things out of more of a primarily Windows background and a lot of things in the cloud, which is a lot of fun, investigating like cloud-based events and how that looks and how to find bad, all that good stuff. So that's kind of what I do now. And I've been focusing a lot on building that skill set out. Yeah, a little bit of a long story, but just you gotta somehow find your way in. And one of the reasons that I, wanted to come here and talk to you is because I wish that I had the ability to, produce some content and like reach out and teach others things. That's something I really enjoy to do with people that I work with. And I've tried to do that a little bit with presentations that I've given and things like that about how analysts like investigate. But I think that what's beautiful about this field is the fact that people are willing to even do that to help others. I got a lot of help just watching people's videos, like I didn't know anything. So all this stuff is awesome. So yeah, that's my background.
Yeah, definitely. And about you producing your own content, I'd love for you to reach out to me on the side. I got a few ideas for you.
Yeah.
Basically, if you haven't seen, as I've told a lot of people, and a lot of those know, I'm trying to bring other content creators onto CyberWarriorStudios, and make it a one-stop shop for anything IT and cyber. So you produce something different, or you have your idea of what you want to do, let me know. And you don't even have to worry about finding a subscriber count. We'll just build this count up by adding your videos to it, and people can come here and watch yours. Or you can do your own channel. It doesn't matter, but it's an idea.
Yeah.
I literally, that's what I've been trying to do, is pull more people in for that process. That's how I got Devil Ray Pen Testing on here, is because he was on board with the idea. He still has his own Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee. I forget which one he's doing. And he started doing pen testing videos to provide some knowledge to the community. So one of the things I will say is I love your journey, because it's odd for me as someone who grew up loving computers. And again, it wasn't like I found a computer, ripped it apart, and was like, oh, I need to know how this works. It was, I broke my dad's computer and never wanted to do it again. So I learned how to fix them and how not to break them, and just kept going with it and refused to get into a position where I didn't know what to do. So I ended up just, it drove me, and it drives me to this day to continue to learn and grow. And the company you were with I think you said it was UPS, where you just asked a million questions over and over and over again. That's what I like about some of your other organizations, like the company I'm with now. You know, we encourage that. Ask questions. Challenge everything. Because if you have a better idea, then make it work, right? Like, present your point. Is this your idea? Or do you have a question? Ask it. I can't tell you how many times I'm on calls like, dude, I have not the slightest idea of what you're trying to do here. Can you please explain? Like, and I'm talking, I like Python. I love scripting. And it's one of those things where I look at some of the code that is written and I'm like, so what do you want to do? All right, we'll figure it out. I got this. But my boss is, or not my boss, that one of the founders of the company, this dude's mind goes like a million miles an hour. It'll be like midnight, and all of a sudden you'll see an email come out like, oh, hey, there's this PR request, and we request these changes, and we're going to do all this to the code. And I'm like, dude, it's midnight. Like, what are you doing? But the way his mind works is great, and it challenges me to keep learning and growing, because the field is so broad, and we have to be able to continue our growth. And if you're not with a company or something like that that's going to allow you to do that, which it looks like your company was willing to, UPS was willing to sit with you and be like, so this is how you do this, and this is how you do that, and this is the tactics and tools, and this is the different things we look for. As someone who didn't know security, really, and came in and was able to get that job and sit down and take the time, not only did you take the time to learn it on your own, but the company helped guide you as someone who knew nothing, basically. And that is so, that's something that's so hard to find these days from a lot of companies. But at the same time, there are so many companies out there that allow you to do that. You just got to find the right one. And that's what I continue to tell people, is never give up. Never think that you can't do it. What you did was you made yourself relevant. You continued to talk to managers. You continued to connect and network and find a way to make yourself relevant and keep yourself in their eyes. And that is something that some people are afraid to do, is put yourself in their field, their purview. If they've never heard of you, if you've never talked to them, then a lot of companies get resumes and you're hoping to make it through the HR system. You're just praying that you make it through the HR system. Whereas when you network and you talk to these different organizations and you reach out to the directors and the managers and the CISOs and you start engaging them and providing valuable feedback, or just saying, hey, look, I want to follow you and connect, and can you be a mentor or something like that? A lot of times these people you network with will get you your first job in security. They'll be the first ones to be like, look, this guy's hungry. Let's at least look. And if you're, saying, hey, and if you're engaging them on like, I'm building a lab and I'm trying to figure this out, do you have any advice on, maybe what I should be doing next? They see that and they'll remember that. The more you talk to these people, the more you talk to your directors, your CISOs, your CIOs, your CEOs of security companies, of even small consulting firms, the more they recognize that, so that when the time comes where you feel you're ready to apply for a job, or maybe that company has a job opening, you're not trying to bypass, you're not trying to make your way through the HR system. You're simply reaching out to the director saying, hey, I'm going to apply. I'm letting you know right now I'm going to apply. And they already know who you are. And that is something that so many people are afraid to do. And so the fact that you did that you continue to network and engage and learn and grow, I hope people can take that and understand that it is a necessity in this field when you're breaking in. I mean, hell, even now, I continue to talk and network and things like that. A, to help people. B, because that helps me in the long run, because then I can reach out to directors and ask questions. If I ever get into management, I'm going to be lost unless I have people that I can rely on and ask questions to. So you never want to put yourself in a position where you have no one to reach out to. And I'm sorry, but everybody who wants to remain anonymous and you never know who they are, a lot of people they're not going to engage with that. I don't know you. Do you have a blog, something I can read that can tell me who you are? No? Oh, okay. Then why am I going to hire you? Because I know nothing about you. I don't know what you've done. I don't know what you're doing. And you're just a number at this point. You're just someone reaching out looking for a handout, which may not be the case, but when you've hidden yourself for so long, it's what it looks like instead of actually engaging the community. And people may not like that, but it's true. So the fact that you went out of your comfort zone to do these things is amazing, and I love it. It is absolutely positively amazing. But going on, I mean, it's been a weird week. Let's be honest. So I love these journeys, but it's been a weird week. So Solaris, I don't know if anybody saw, they had a few patches come out recently. They got hit again. Well, they didn't get breached. They got responsible disclosure, right? So cross-site scripting, a few races, and everything, all still with Orion. So chew on that one a little bit. But I got someone who got opinions on bug bounty. So 240 DB in stream would like to know what your opinions are on bug bounties. Either one, go first.
I mean, I don't have too much of an opinion on that because it's not necessarily in my lane. I mean, I have friends who do it. It seems like some companies have pretty good processes as far as, rewarding folks for finding stuff. And it seems like half the time though, somebody finds something and companies don't respond to it, and then it ends up blowing up in their face. So I don't know. I mean, as far as, it being a lucrative career field, it seems like there's obviously plenty of opportunities out there for it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo that. I think it's good for companies to have some kind of program in place. Hopefully that would deter, some people from, doing something wrong with what they find. I don't know, depending on how that company handles those requests. I also see that there's a lot of people that appear to be successful with that, and I think that's awesome. But I definitely don't spend too much time with bug bounties or anything like that.
Yeah, so I'm right there. I haven't done any bug bounties. I've considered it. I want to do it. I just don't have the time of day. My bandwidth is limited. But I do think you can make a good career out of it if you have the time of day to spend and can actually dedicate time to it. But again, it comes down to how companies want to do things. I would hope more would either have some type of bug bounty program, even if you're not going to put it on like HackerOne or BugCrowd or something like that. At least have something internal that you can present to the public and say, hey, we'll release, whatever amount of money, depending on what you find, this, that, and the third. Because what I've noticed is what a lot of people do, and the reason why I ain't going to say the reason why, but partly the reason why that people go, I guess you would say, dark and malicious is because it is more lucrative, right? When you're working a job, you've got to, work 40, 50 hours a week, sometimes more, and you might be making anywhere from below six figures to, if you're not in management, maybe up to $200,000, give or take, depending on if you own your own company and you're a consultant making money or not. But if you're malicious, people go that route because it's lucrative, because they can do different things. And there's no restraint. There's no red tape. There's no, handcuffs. There's no bureaucracy. So I like bug bounties as long as A, companies honor them and fix them when they're disclosed to the company, and B, pay out. I understand the kudos prospect of things in certain bug bounty platforms, but what is going to encourage someone to truly find something if there's not a benefit in the long run?
I think having, being a company and having a robust bug bounty program obviously puts you in a more active position as far as trying to identify issues that you have with your infrastructure and your code. So I think that that's definitely the desired end state that a lot of companies need to move to. But I just don't know necessarily, how many are taking that seriously enough at this point.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of those things. It's up in the air. Some companies do take these things seriously. Some don't. It's really company driven. Got a few more questions here, which is always good. So Mickey Sec on Twitch says blue team or red team and why. So my guess is it's what do you prefer. Now I like them all, so I can't really say I prefer one over the other. But what about you guys?
I'm biased. I'm blue team. That's all I've done. I love catching red team stuff. I love catching malicious activity. That's what I enjoy to do. So I'm definitely blue team. I love the ability of looking at what happened and telling a story based on events. I love grabbing, and correlating between different logs to demonstrate, what could have happened or to make better detections for things. So I spent a lot of time on blue team. So again, I'm going to be super biased. I don't see myself in a red team, career at all. But yeah, so that's my opinion on it.
So for me, a few different things. So my whole career has been in engineering and architecture. And my foundational belief is that everybody that works in IT is actually a member of the blue team, whether or not they understand it and realize it. If you work in IT, your job is to help your company or organization meet whatever, the mission is, and do that via technology that you're building out, operating, maintaining, and you need to do that in a manner. You need to be providing safety for your users. You need to be providing safety for your critical data. And so, yeah, you might not actually be an analyst in a SOC, but if you're a sysadmin, you need to be configuring policies, GPO policies in a way that meet security guidelines and baselines and do it in a secure manner. You need to make sure that you have the right type of logging enabled. You need to make sure that you are following and providing data for different types of policies and procedures in your environment. So really, you can go down the whole gambit of all the different roles and positions in IT, and cybersecurity is, a layer that's baked into all of that. So that's part of my answer. My other part of my answer is I was lucky enough to be asked to be in the Tribe of Hackers Blue Team book. So I kind of have to go default blue team because of that. I will say, though, that from my perspective and the way that I try to approach things is I like to take a lot of red team training. And I like to do that because I think that it makes me a better engineer and a better architect. So if I understand the tools and the procedures and the methods that attackers are using, then that can help me better determine ways to build out and design environments to slow that down, identify areas you need to have certain types of controls or logging and things like that. And so I think which team you're on, it's really good to actually train as though you're on the other side of that. And I think that provides you a lot of additional value and will make you better in whatever role you're in.
No, I'm gonna add something there. I echo the red team training. Some of the most enjoyable detection ideas have come from me looking at what the red team does and like trying to step into those shoes. So I definitely feel like there's a huge advantage to understanding those. Even I got compromise reports, and like what happened and the layers, right? Like from a attacker's perspective, I think that's really helped me be a better blue teamer. So I agree. I mean, I think those things kind of work together to create, a better security program in your organization.
For sure.
I love that everybody agrees because actually I agree with both of you. It's funny because going even through all my training in the Army for being on blue team and being a defender was offensive, right? GSEC, GCIH,
yep.
GCED were all a lot of offensive materials because you got to learn how to attack to learn how to defend. And I feel the same way about attacking. You got to learn how to defend to learn how to attack, because you need to know the tools, techniques that, you know, blue teams and companies are going to use against you, whether it's anti-malware solutions or SIM solutions or correlation or what logs they're looking at. So having that ability to know both sides of the coin allows you to either distract and extract information or in data, or understand how red teamers do things, so that you can sit there and go, you know, that looks like something, but it's probably just a misdirect, or it's probably they're using this point to get to this point to get to this point. So, you know, I can correlate all that data. So understanding both sides of the coin can help you in any job. And that's why I've told a lot of people, if you want to be an analyst or even an engineer, because a lot of your MSSPs, if you end up going to an MSSP and being an engineer, you work on SIMs a lot. So you need to be able to build and help build correlation rules and things of that nature. And in order to do that, you need to know what logs you're looking for. So are you looking for a brute force to an authentication, to privilege escalation, to lateral movement? Like, that way you can track this all along the way. So having that capability and understanding how red teamers are going to think and work, and how attackers are going to think and work and do things, allows you to catch this stuff. And if you're not able to analyze data in that fashion, it really makes it hard to do your job on a blue team. Just as on a red team, or even if you're an attacker, you know, someone actually trying to do something malicious, if you don't understand how companies may have certain IPSs and firewall rules and anti-malware solutions and SIMs, if you don't know how to clear your tracks, if you don't know how to do all these different things, then you're going to get caught. You're going to get stopped somewhere along the route, you know, somewhere along the path, that you're not going to have the full effect that you were looking for. It's going to be stopped and mitigated, and you're going to be screwed because you were caught before you ever intended to get caught. So knowing both sides helps. Red team, blue team, at least have an understanding how both sides of the coin work. So that is definitely huge, knowing that. And I can't echo enough how much my training in red team helped me be a better engineer and build correlation rules. At the same time, it gave me that pen tester red team training to be able to hide myself and do a lot of different things. And I will give a shout out as far as offensive maneuvers to Keytron Evans, who was my CEH instructor years ago, who taught me, you know, some of the better ways to clear track. Well, have companies clear tracks for you. But it's one of those things where you just look at things differently. So understanding that you don't want to be noisy, you want to be quiet. Well, why do you want to be quiet? Well, because a SIM is going to see a network scan, and they're going to see all these different things, and firewalls are going to block an IP if it's just scanning their external IP address for a million different things. You're going to have these blocks come along. So yeah, definitely understanding both sides of it is huge. So
one other point with that, which is kind of interesting. So from the blue team perspective and kind of trying to design things out, one of my favorite topics that I've seen come up, I actually took a class at Black Hat on this from John Strand, is active defense. And so that's kind of trying to put things in place that actually annoy attackers and slow them down. I mean, so these are kind of like different things, whether it's related to various types of honeypots, honey accounts, canary tokens, all sorts of different types of things that you can use both from slowing down and attribution perspectives, which some of them are very, very simple. And I think are really valuable for organizations to implement if they're aware of ways to do it. And it kind of is, you know, canary in a coal mine is kind of a perfect example, because the canary is going to die first once the carbon monoxide builds up in there, right? So, you know, if there's certain things that you put out there that are enticing adversaries to go after them, and you're able to, you know, be aware of that happening, then, you know, that's going to give you a little bit more of a advanced notice to be able to protect things or get other things in place.
Yeah, definitely. And John Strand's always one that you want to watch any of his talks. That man puts out amazing, amazing information. So you can't go wrong with listening to him for sure.
Yeah, he was my GCIH teacher, and that was
awesome.
amazing. I was very lucky. He was. I mean, I think that was my first actual offensive training because that's basically an offensive class. But yeah, amazing storyteller.
Yep.
For sure, for sure. So we got man, chat is active today. Like, I don't even have to like bring up conversation. I got questions coming all day. So Studio Sec on YouTube, he says, do you think people feel more comfortable, and this is going back to some of our earlier conversations, with going the blackout route because they feel they can achieve anonymity? I say no. I think it's more financially and or government oriented, activism or things like that. But what's your take? Do you think it's more trying to remain anonymous, or what are your feelings on that?
Money is a huge incentivizer. I mean, one of the reasons why I even started going into security was because I wanted to get out of poverty. So I can imagine that feeling is just about for everybody, maybe more so for others. I think that's one of the biggest incentivizers.
Yep, agreed. Especially depending upon where the folks are located, whether or not they're in the U.S. or other places, that can play a lot into that. Part of it might also be not having the awareness that there are legal means to go about doing the same things, and you can get paid pretty well doing them, right? I mean, so there's kind of that aspect as well. Maybe some folks are black hats without really realizing the opportunities that are out there from team perspectives.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's another thing is when you're not putting yourself out there, when you're not looking at the community, you're delving into the malicious side of things. You kind of lose perspective. And if you're looking for a regular payday and guaranteed cash flow coming in, being malicious will get you that quick hit of cash, whatever it is you're looking for, if you're good, or if you're connected to the right people and can get the right code to be able to do it. But let's be honest, having a job and doing this and being on a red team and being a pen tester and understanding that methodology is a guaranteed payday. You're going to work for a company and get paid on a regular basis. What I'll have to worry about is this company going to pay their ransom. So, I mean, and you're
you don't have to worry about ending up in jail.
Exactly.
Unless you're pen testing a courthouse somewhere in the Midwest.
We're not going to talk about that. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot to it, but I definitely think, when you look at those, being in jail, it's crazy because then you look at, I take a look at a lot of the government jobs and a lot of what they do, and if you're looking at financial motivation, I think there's a reason that it's hard to find someone to work in government, and it is pay. Let's be honest, unless you're SES, unless you're a contractor or SES and an executive that doesn't get your hands on the keyboard anymore, your pay is limited within the government. So to get those people to secure your networks in that government spectrum, on a civilian side is difficult unless you get a contract that pays lucratively, which they generally do, but then you got to hope they pick up the contract or you keep your job after 3 years. So in the private sector, though, like actually working for companies, dude, you can make a lot of money just doing what you do for fun. And
I mean, so I would say that's the same thing from the government side as well, just not as a government employee, but there isn't really that many IT roles that are actual government employees. Almost everything's contractor. And the other thing that you normally run into that is those contracts are normally a decent amount of time, and it's normally the same companies winning them over and over and over again. Like they might swap out, but for instance, if you end up working in a SOC, I don't know, just make something up, in the IRS, right? And whatever integrator or MSP or whoever it is, whatever type of company that actually has that contract loses it, whoever's coming in there as a contract winner is more than likely going to be offering those same positions to the folks that were there. So it's not normally like people are really packing up and leaving all the time when it comes to that stuff. There's normally a decent amount of stability there.
Yeah, I can agree with that. It's just I can see where the fear is. Understanding that fear of, oh, it's a contract for 3 years. But yeah, I mean, I think financial is definitely a big part in having a steady paycheck. And some people just see that quick hit of cash. Let's be honest, in this society today, we need immediate gratification. So if we can do something and immediately make 50, 100 grand versus having to work for a year to maybe make 100 grand, big difference there. So I can see where that comes into play. But again, you risk going to jail. You risk losing everything. And on top of that, the expense you paid, if you didn't design the code, let's be honest, this malware is pretty pricey on the, where you're going to buy it from. So you're looking at 10, 20 grand maybe. So out of that, if you made 50 grand and you just lost the 20 grand that you paid them, so you only made 30, is it really worth it to risk going to jail? So I can understand. I personally I could never do it. Like, black hats, people that want to attack and be malicious, is just, A, it's not me, and B, it's not worth the risk. I'd rather work for a living and guarantee myself a paycheck every month. Like, that's just how I am. I know money's coming in. I know where it's coming from. I don't have to worry. But yeah, so definitely an interesting question, because it is. I don't think it isn't about anonymity at all. I think they remain anonymous to try not to get caught, but that's not the motivational factor. So Mickey Sec, man, he's all full of questions on Twitch. I'm loving it. So what are your thoughts on the fact that nowadays most people are focusing on pen tests instead of learning how to build a secure infrastructure in the first place?
So, I mean, my advice to anybody who wants to go to get into cybersecurity, whether or not it's pen testing or even the blue team side of stuff, is yes, you could jump into it, and the learning curve is going to be really, really hard. Compared to if you actually get a foundational understanding of IT and whether you want to get into systems or networking and stuff like that. It's just, you have to understand what it is that you're attacking or what it is that you're defending. And if you don't actually have some experience with that, mixed with understanding what an operational environment is like, I mean, because there's the technology part of that, but then there's also the people part of that. There's the politics part of that. There's a whole bunch of, things of how that's all intertwined. I think getting that experience in IT first really will set you up to have more success once you move into more specific areas of cybersecurity, whether or not that's pen testing or blue team or, anything else.
Yeah. I find that interesting because I believe that to excel in this field, it's all about understanding how things work. And I've had it happen myself, like when I was talking a little bit about my background, where I was missing certain things in my IT understanding and it backfired. And I had to play catch up with certain things. I had to learn, like, why is this happening this way? Is this really malicious, or is this just how this is supposed to work? Mm-hmm. Right. That's just coming from a, SOC perspective.
Right. Yep.
I think the same thing happens if you want to be a pen tester. You want to understand how something works so you can bypass whatever it is that you're trying to, do. So is it possible? Yeah, I've seen a lot of people, bypass that and, be very successful in what they're doing. But I feel like to a certain degree, you have to understand how things work. Maybe you're good at understanding that on the fly. That's awesome, and getting that knowledge there, hands-on. But I had to go back to books a lot, like back to packets a lot. So yeah, I mean, it's possible, but definitely better to have some foundation.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it is very, I'm not going to say it's impossible. A lot of people have done it. They've gone straight to, I want to be in cyber, to I'm a pen tester. They've either researched all the tools, tactics, techniques, and done it. But I do feel that the more you understand networking and system administration, and then the basics of security, the easier it is in any of the security career fields. Because if you don't understand networks, if you don't understand system administration and operating systems, then you're going in basically blind. And you're going to say, okay, I want to, if you're going to be a pen tester, well, how does Active Directory work? What are GPOs? What's a forest? What are all these different concepts within a domain and an Exchange server and SQL servers? If you don't know those, then you're just basically going out and Googling, hey, I found this service or I found this application, what's my way in? Without understanding that you may have a way in within 5 seconds because you're already a user you can already gain access to a user that, is essentially an administrator. So if you don't understand the concepts of how these things work, it makes it very difficult. And at the same time, especially when you're working in enterprise, you run a tool like Bloodhound and you're seeing all these different paths to do different things, but you have no clue what any of it is. You're like, well, what's the DNS admin? Or what is this? And you're like, I don't get it. Well, yeah, because you haven't got the foundational knowledge of IT. And I'm not saying you have to be a server administrator or a network admin or a network engineer. By all means, you don't have to do those things. It helps if you've worked in any of those roles. But understanding what is the TCP/IP, what is, networking and ports and, what is your different Active Directory structures and GPOs and, all this different stuff that goes into creating an actual network infrastructure. If you at least understand what everything is and how it talks to each other, then it makes your job easier, whether you're blue team or red team. Whether you're on the offense or defense, having that baseline knowledge. And again, as Chris said, if you're kind of going in blind to some of this stuff, you're going to be looking things up nonstop. And if you can learn on the fly, great. But if you can't, it does make your job harder trying to either get into the field, or once you're there, that you're going to be spending all your free time building labs and learning, or you're going to end up getting fired. Because if you're not trying to learn and grow, you're gone. Like, you're out the door. So
I want to add one more thing there, really quickly. I thought about what you were saying that. I think having some kind of a background or understanding design helps with the human element of the job, especially if you're like in an internal role. Because something I had to learn was talking to people when I was in IT and like understanding why decisions are made for the business, like getting a much better business understanding of, the company you might be working for. I think really helps if you're going to be successful in any kind of security role. Like the human element is super important. Like, why did this administrator do this thing? Well, now you know why they do that. It's good to know.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's something that a lot of us in cyber, for a while, it's come a long way, but we neglected that business enablement aspect of, well, why is this port open? Like, this should not be open. Why is whatever? Why are we running this RDP service and it's available inbound? Like, some of these things that make sense. And yeah, from a security perspective, they don't. But maybe there's not a VPN service yet. Maybe there's not a jump box to do different things. So you have to take that in consideration. And if you don't get that people element, if you don't talk to the business structure and your other teammates and those that have been there, and maybe you have to reach out to your director or the CISO or whatever. If you have to talk to these people, like, hey, look, can you please explain to me why this vulnerability is here? Like, why are we letting this happen? Then you're just going to be constantly feeling like this network sucks. I don't want to be here. Like, this is stupid. But if you get that, if we get away from that, everything has to be locked down. Because let's be honest, I don't care who you are. The only secure computer is unplugged 6 feet underground in a concrete and lead lined box. Like, anything can be broken into if somebody has enough time and patience. So being able to enable a business to still operate and do their jobs is what our job is about. We need to secure it, but you have to take in that risk acceptance, risk avoidance. You have to look at everything and work with the business to do that. We can only mitigate so much. There's no way we can make a network 100% secure, as much as we'd love to. After that, it just becomes about detection and mitigation. But I mean, that's really the nuts and bolts of it, right? Like, just...
Yeah. So I'm going to get on my soapbox for a second. And I completely agree with what you're saying. And it's one of the things that I think really delineates between good InfoSec and cybersecurity folks and ones that maybe aren't so good. And that is the job in that position isn't to say no to things because it's not secure. It is to give options to do things in a secure way. So if the engineers come to you, and hopefully your engineers think with a security mindset and are coming forward with good suggestions. If they aren't, though, your job isn't to be like, no, we can't do that. That's not secure. We're going to get breached. Your job is to be like, okay, I understand why you're asking for this because we have this business need for this. These are some other ways that we could go about doing this and implementing it in a way where you would still be able to have your users get access to this type of data or have, remote access for this or whatever. But we would do it in a way where we're providing more safety for the environment and for the data.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone that works in InfoSec, we're service providers for the company that we work for. There's nothing worse than the stigma that the security guys are going to come in or gals are going to come in and say, stop doing that.
Yep.
Because that's the worst way. That is how you stop engineers from actually even reaching out to you to ask questions.
And then you end up with the Wild West.
And that's a disaster. So yeah, leaving that open door policy.
Yep.
Please come speak to us.
Yeah, and that's the problem, right? Some of these companies bring in security for the first time, and if you're always saying no, they're just going to find ways around you. They're going to implement whatever application, open whatever port, do whatever they want, and never discuss it with you. So being a business enabler, you can sit there and say, okay, why do we need this? And if we need it, what can we do to make the risk as low as possible? Do we need to put an alert in the SIM for if somebody does something? Do we need to do, blacklist IPs? Like, what can we do to help mitigate this? Because it's a business necessity. While at the same time, you can sit there and work with them, and sometimes you do have to say no. But it's not till after you have exhausted every possible option and sit there and go, you know what? There's just no feasible way that this is going to work. There's too many vulnerabilities on the application, on the network. It's just, it leaves us wide open. We'd be SOL. That's like leaving RDP open and not having any firewall roles or anything to stop people coming in. Hey, let's expose SMB outbound. How about that? Let's just do that. We'll be okay. Like, conceptually, it's the same thing. Like, there are certain times where you just have to sit there and go, no. It's just, there's no reason for it. You can't provide a valid business case for this being needed. So I'm completely on board. Like, we have to enable businesses. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If you don't enable it, they're just going to find their way around you. They're just going to be like, you know what, I'm just not going to talk to you. And then you're going to do a scan and be like, what the fuck is this? Like, why is this still running? And they're like, oh, well, we needed it. The fuck did you need it for? Because. Is there a firewall role? Is there this? Is there that? Like, I don't even have an alert for it in my fucking SIM. Like, what the fuck is going on here? And you don't want to be in that position, because then it just causes division and it makes people not want to come to you. So definitely, Chris, I can't echo enough. Like, that getting with the people and being able to enable and work with them is huge. Is absolutely huge. And so many people, God, man, Mickey Sec is full of questions today. I'm loving it. So the next one, and this is something that I have avoided like the plague until this company I work with now. As a security professional, how safe do you feel with having your business data in the cloud? Whether it be Azure, AWS, Google, Oracle, any big concerns about data safety?
Well, understand how the cloud works is number one thing I would say. Understand where the keys are stored. Where's the good stuff? What is even in there, right? Because a lot of people are like, oh yeah, we got a lot of stuff in the cloud, but what is that data that's in the cloud? I think it's a really good question. That's just where we're going. I don't see that changing. It just makes sense financially for a lot of companies to do that instead of having huge warehouses full of data centers themselves. I mean, I think it's just part of the landscape, and I think we all just kind of have to get accustomed to that. I don't see that really going anywhere anytime soon. Yeah, if you're like blue team like me, you spend time understanding how that works and how to investigate events in there, because like we just talked about before, anything can be broken into. And we've seen, I mean, how long did it take for it, not to call out Amazon, they've just been around for a long time. How long did it take for them to figure out like better ways of managing S3 and not, allow like default settings, just leaving everything open, So I think we're all just learning, honestly. It's just part of the game.
So I would follow up that question with a question. And that would be, how is your current security practices on your on-prem infrastructure? Because if that's not up to par, then yeah, I'm concerned about what you're doing in the cloud. Yeah, I mean, it's the same stuff for the most part, just some different APIs, different ways to access stuff. You got to have a holistic approach to it. For God's sake, use multi-factor authentication.
Everywhere.
Everywhere. Yeah.
Don't let anyone tell you no.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. That's my perspective. I mean, because it really depends on the organization, how serious they take it, what type of tools you have in the cloud, how it integrates with what you have back on-prem. I mean, there's a lot to it.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the things I learned is, so my thought process always is the cloud is just somebody else's computer, right? Mm. And everybody's like, yeah, but it's Amazon or it's Google or it's Microsoft, which means they're probably going to have better physical security than you do. I'm like, yeah, you're right. But I still have no say into any of the back-end security. So everything is stored on the same server. So I don't know their security. So if one virtual machine gets compromised from some other company that my virtual machine just so happens to be hosted on, what is the capability of somebody, if they truly wanted to get all the way through the network or all the way through that box, so to speak. And that was just my thought process for years when cloud first came out, was if you compromise one, you can potentially compromise them all. Now I've learned to change my way of thinking and understand that your operating systems, your network is only as secure as you make it. So just like your on-prem, where you secure your firewalls, your data, your servers, you encrypt things, you do all this different stuff. Same concept in the cloud. You have virtual ways of, even to this day, I tell my firewalls, I tell my firewalls that, I only want port 22 inbound on my IP. I don't want anybody else to be able to access it. I only want, this port inbound on my IP. Nobody else is allowed to access it. So that way, if it's something that only I want to access, only I can access. But again, if you don't do those things, if you don't configure security groups and firewall roles and, your ACLs and everything else like that, then you're wide open. But Amazon and Google and Microsoft even put in there, that part of the infrastructure is on you. We'll secure the hardware. We'll make sure you have uptime and put in our own security things on the back end. But as far as your operating systems and your network infrastructure and your applications, securing those is on you. And if you aren't securing it on-prem, then what makes you think you're going to secure it in the cloud? Because Amazon's not going to do the job for you. Google's not going to do the job for you. It's still on you to implement, your WordPress updates or whatever the case may be, and put in the security measures to secure your information. So I honestly think, I don't think it matters where it's at if you're not doing your due diligence to secure it anyways. I think it is a different platform. I'm still a huge fan. don't get me wrong, one of our founders is a huge fan of Docker and things like that. I'm still a huge fan of virtual machines. I love virtual machines. You give me virtual machines all day, I can run those networks. I know how they talk. But you get me working on Docker and Kubernetes, and I'm looking at it going, man, now I got to figure this out and figure out how to make these talk to each other and everything else. But I know VMs because it's, hey, put this IP address in, and it's just its own little network. Whereas with Docker, you got to run a Docker file and get it all figured out. But, it's just learning something new. Backups and everything else like that, it can all be done. And financially, I think it can be a benefit because you're not paying an electric bill. You're not paying security guards to secure that data. So there's a lot of cost offset, and you can, at that point, just worry about paying the people that secure your data, which is your IT and your cybersecurity teams. But at the same time, I think a hybrid approach may even be better because whether that's using AWS and Azure or AWS and on-prem, it doesn't matter. But I think still having that separation of where your data is located so that if something fails, you can still have something to rely on is a better approach because we've all seen Amazon go down. We've all seen Microsoft go down. We've all seen Dyn DNS go down. All these things have happened. So having different ways that you're not losing business is huge. And so hybrid, regardless if it's hybrid cloud or cloud and on-prem, I think that's the best approach.
I had one last thing there. If you're in the process of moving to the cloud or you're in the cloud and you have some kind of hybrid approach or whatever it is, whatever your organization has, please, if there's no diagrams for these things, please start doing that. Understand where the boundaries are. Understand how the cloud is talking to your internal environment if that you have that set up. I can't tell you how many times I've just been concerned because it's oh yeah, so where's the diagram so that we can actually build some proper detection for where these boundaries are because it makes sense, right? We want to know where the risks are. And diagrams, well, I mean, that's kind of why you're here, right? So that's something that just came to mind when you were talking. I heard hybrid and I was like, oh man, that must be a crazy diagram. But yeah.
Yeah, diagrams are huge, and that's something that I think with the cloud, a lot of companies still shy away from. Hell, I've worked for companies where you ask for a network diagram, and it's like pulling teeth trying to get one, and it's all on-prem. You're like, dude, I need a diagram. I need to be able to see where my traffic is going so that I know what I'm looking at. And again, like you said, boundaries. And Amazon's big on boundaries, right? Even if you're doing Terraform code, trying to set up, have instances, be able to set up with infrastructure as code, it needs to know all these boundaries. Okay, what can this account reach? What can it not reach? What can this, what can all these different things do? And if you don't have those permission boundaries set, then it's just willy-nilly. It is. It's like the Wild West. It's all right, cool, just go. Just just run. I don't care. We're okay. We'll be all right. And you don't want that. So, yeah, network diagrams, cloud diagrams, whatever you want to call them, they're still huge. I definitely think, though, that it's an interesting conversation because cloud hybrid, it's still coming around. It's still growing. It's still going to be a vast field. I've talked to Keytron Evans. I've talked to my, one of the founders of the company I work for now, and so many other people, and they're all like, oh yeah, cloud and Docker and all these other things. And I ain't gonna lie, I'm still one of those people stuck on give me my machine, give me bare metal and some virtual machines. I'm learning the cloud and I'm using the cloud. I'm not gonna say I'm not, but I still prefer, hands down, I know where my hard drives are, I know where my data is. I am still very much that type of person that's just I know the benefits, but I still like what I have. I can manage what I have. But financially and everything else is just, the cloud does make sense, especially a hybrid approach. You can ease off your server, growth and be like, all right, we don't need a, 10,000 square foot data center. We can lower it to 1,000 square feet because we're going to use it as a backup site to where we'll put a load balancer in or something to where if this goes down, we just need our website up or whatever the case may be. But I definitely think that cloud's the way to go. So for anybody watching, if you're not learning the cloud now, start learning it. I don't care if it's AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, or Lord knows whatever cloud, DigitalOcean. Go ahead, find your cloud provider and learn it. But understand how these cloud infrastructures work, and it'll take you far, because a lot of companies are looking for that when they hire security engineers, when they hire IT, when they're hiring SOC analysts. You need to understand how your cloud logs work, because AWS is different than Azure, is different than Google. You're going to have different, logs from different things. So if you understand how these all talk together, then it'll take you far. So never quit learning, and don't be like me. Don't put off learning the cloud until you absolutely have to.
Microsoft is always doing free training and free cert vouchers for their I don't know what you want to call them, entry-level cloud certifications. I think they even have one program that's ending at the end of the month, but I say probably do it 2 or 3 times a year, where they have different trainings where if you actually attend the virtual training, then you get the, voucher to go take, whatever it is. I think I did it last summer, and it was the AZ, was it 900, which is the Azure fundamentals. Did like some YouTube videos on like practice stuff and stuff, to help people out. It's a good entry-level cloud cert, kind of get you, understanding the differences between the different service levels and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. And we're going to wrap it up here in a minute. Go ahead, Chris. And then we'll wrap it up.
I was going to say, once you start learning one, I think it's really helpful, because a lot of them work very similarly, and they just have different terms for stuff.
Yep.
So once you start learning one, I think that's a huge benefit. So don't be overwhelmed by having to learn all. They have small subtleties that are different, but just learn one of them. That'll translate.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm learning that now, because like the company I work for, we started out like, oh yeah, learn AWS. And I was like, all right, cool. And I started learning AWS, and then one of my counterparts is like, oh yeah, and we're talking Azure, and I'm like, hold up, wait, what's this? He's like, all right, so subscriptions are like accounts in AWS. So subscriptions in Microsoft are like accounts. And like, oh. I'm like, because I was lost. Like, you had me so confused. Like, there's so many. And again, it's basically the same thing. They just use different terms. But again, like the hard part for me was trying to migrate from that local Active Directory, like an account as a user account that you log into. Whereas an account on AWS it has different EC2 instances, different security groups. Like, it's a whole different account basically for the organization. And I'm like, holy crap. Like, wait, so an account isn't an account. It's a whole different network. Like, God, come on. But yeah, it's a learning process, and it's something that I love learning. So like I've been doing A Cloud Guru, and going through the courses on there has been amazing. And I did a few free Microsoft courses. I need to get back into Azure and learn more about it. But yeah, it's essentially terminology is what it comes down to. Everything is the same. Of course, you got your different dashboards and menus, but the tool sets and what you can do are essentially the same between the two. It's just different terms. So, but otherwise, look, it has been awesome having everybody on here. It's been a great conversation. Thank you all so much for the questions in chat. It helps move things along and get some more opinions out there and get your questions answered. So thank you again. It's been a pleasure having you all. And of course, I'm Cyber Warrior. We got John, we got Chris, and I will have new guests on next week, and I will see you all next time.